The rain poured relentlessly that evening, soaking the quiet, desolate highway. A lone figure stood by the side of the road, their silhouette barely visible through the curtain of water. The hitchhiker, clad in a sodden coat with a hood pulled over their head, seemed an improbable sight against the backdrop of a darkening sky. Vehicles sped by without a glance, the drivers caught up in their own lives, unaware of the figure's desperate plea for connection. As the minutes dragged into hours, the hitchhiker's gaze remained fixed on the road, an unsettling stillness cloaking them. Just as the last remnants of daylight faded, a car finally approached, its headlights illuminating the hitchhiker. The driver, a middle-aged man with weary eyes, slowed to a stop. Hesitation flickered in the passenger's mind, but a silent urgency propelled them forward. Sliding into the seat, they exchanged no words, yet an invisible tension filled the space between them. The driver glanced nervously at the hitchhiker, sensing an underlying current of something unnameable. The hitchhiker's eyes, dark and inscrutable, hinted at secrets buried deep below the surface. As they drove along the winding road, the atmosphere grew thick with unspoken thoughts. The driver attempted small talk, probing for normalcy. But the hitchhiker offered only vague responses, their voice a mere whisper that blended with the drumming rain. Something was off, and the driver felt a chill creeping along his spine. He couldn't shake the sense that this wasn't just a simple hitchhiker. It was as if the air around them thickened with dread, drawing him into a psychological dance he didn't want to participate in. The hitchhiker, with their enigmatic smile, seemed to know more than they revealed, collecting secrets like shadows along the way. The car's headlights broke through the darkness, revealing haunting images reflected in the rain-soaked pavement. Suddenly, the hitchhiker's demeanor shifted, and a palpable coldness seeped into the confines of the vehicle. They leaned closer, their breath ghosting against the driver's ear, asking questions that pried open old wounds, dredging up fears he thought long forgotten. The driver gripped the wheel tighter, heart racing as flickers of his own past played out like a broken film reel, each revelation unraveling his sanity. By the time they reached a secluded stretch of road, silence enveloped them, the hitchhiker's final gaze locking him in a cocoon of terror, leaving him to wonder who truly was the captive and who had become the captor in this haunting ride. The campsite, nestled deep within the whispering pines, was a sanctuary for the weary, yet there was an unspoken tension simmering in the air. Claire and her friends, seeking an escape from their bustling lives, set up their tents under the vast canvas of stars. Laughter echoed through the trees as they exchanged stories around the crackling fire. But a chill rolled through the clearing when Claire noticed the silence that followed. It was as though the forest itself was listening, holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. As night deepened, one of Claire's friends, Ben, proposed a game to test their courage. The rules were simple, yet sinister. Each person would take a turn wandering into the woods, blindfolded, and try to find their way back. The thrill of fear hung heavily in the air, but one by one they ventured out, the darkness swallowing them whole. Claire's heart raced with each minute that passed. She could hear whispers, barely audible snippets that seemed to echo her own thoughts, amplifying her sense of isolation, even though her friends were nearby. When it was Claire's turn, she slipped the blindfold over her eyes, and the world transformed into a suffocating, dark void. The forest floor crunched beneath her feet, but the laughter had faded, replaced by an oppressive stillness. She felt an unshakable presence, lurking just beyond her reach, an unseen observer tracing her every step. With each hesitant movement, The whispers grew louder, teasing her with echoes of her insecurities, her fears, and the secrets she had buried. The deeper she wandered, the more her sanity wavered, every rustle of leaves igniting her primal instincts to flee. Finally, disoriented and trembling, she ripped off the blindfold, only to find herself utterly alone. Panic surged as she called out for her friends, but all that answered her was an unending silence that pressed against her chest. The trees loomed like monstrous giants, and in her gut, she felt the unmistakable horror of being watched. As the realization set in that she was not just lost, but perhaps never meant to be found, Claire understood that the forest was not simply a backdrop, but a malevolent force, feeding on her fears and waging a psychological war within her mind. In the corner of an old dusty gallery, nestled between dismissive landscapes, stood a painting cloaked in darkness. Its canvas portrayed a lone figure, a woman with hollow eyes that seemed to pull in the viewer's gaze, drawing them into an internal abyss. Unlike the other works, this piece bore an unsettling energy, a silent whisper that echoed through the gallery, urging onlookers to linger just a moment longer. Whispers among the art community spoke of its creator, a reclusive artist who had vanished shortly after its completion, leaving behind only this haunting masterpiece. Though unseen by the casual observer, Melanie felt the weight of the painting's gaze from her first encounter. She visited the gallery frequently, each time succumbing to the tingling sensation that coursed through her body as she stood before the woman on the canvas. With every visit, Melanie noted the subtle changes in the figure's expression. Her lips seemed to part slightly, her eyes more pronounced in their sorrow. It became an internal obsession, a quest to decipher the emotions locked within the painted features, gradually overshadowing Melanie's thoughts about her own life. Days turned into weeks, and Melanie's once vibrant personality began to dull under the canvas's influence. She started to lose sleep, haunted by dreams of the woman who now felt like a close confidant, sharing her isolation through shared sorrow. Friends noticed her withdrawal, their phrases of concern brushing against her ears like the distant rustle of autumn leaves. But Melanie was enraptured. The line between the real and the imagined began to blur as she found herself speaking to the painting, offering her own secrets, her own fears to the silent listener who seemed to understand better than any human ever could. One fateful evening, drawn by an irresistible urge, Melanie sat alone before the painting, consumed by an inexplicable need to touch the canvas. As her fingers grazed the surface, a chilling sensation coursed through her, and the gallery around her faded into darkness. For the first time, she felt the woman smile, an unsettling blend of empathy and longing that seemed to engulf her. In that moment, Melanie understood the painting's true impact. It was a mirror reflecting the void within her soul, claiming her with each brushstroke. As she faded into the shadows, the gallery stood still, the painting now a mere echo of her essence, surrounded once again by indifferent art that would never truly understand. The carnival arrived on a misty Friday evening, its vibrant lights cutting through the fog like splashes of paint on a blank canvas. The air buzzed with the sounds of laughter and distant music, drawing Ellie in with an almost magnetic pull. She wandered through the twisting aisles, past stalls draped in rich fabrics, but something felt off, as if the joy was merely a thin veil hiding an underlying darkness. The laughter seemed to echo, stretching longer than it should, wrapping around her like a warm shroud that left her unsettled. As she moved deeper into the carnival, the cheerful games and merry-go-rounds gave way to shadowy corners and flickering lights. There were performers in masks, their faces obscured, who whispered secrets that felt like cold fingers running down her spine. One particularly tall figure caught her eye, its painted smile stretching wider than any human could manage. It beckoned her closer with a slight nod, and as she approached, the murmurs of the crowd faded into an eerie silence that draped over her like a heavy fog. Inside a tent of distorted mirrors, Ellie caught sight of herself from countless angles, her features twisted and warped. Each reflection showed a different version of her, some smiling brightly while others grimaced, their expressions mirroring her deepest fears. She reached out to touch one reflection, and an icy chill shot through her, as if she had broken the barrier between worlds. The mirrors whispered her name, echoing with a haunting familiarity, each repetition pulling her deeper into an abyss where reality blurred and her thoughts spiraled uncontrolled. Frantically, Ellie stumbled out of the tent, seeking the comfort of the thrumming carnival outside, but the once vibrant scene had now transformed into a nightmarish tableau. The rides stood still. The laughter had twisted into something sinister, and the fog thickened around her like a living entity. Each face she turned to was now devoid of expression, hollow eyes tracking her every move. Panic clawed at her heart as she realized the cruel joke of this place. She was not just a visitor, but part of a performance where the audience was the nightmare itself, and the show would never end.